Nobody wants you here! The boy's voice cracked like a whip, loud enough to silence the rustle of cars passing by. His words cut through the quiet of the bus stop, and for a moment, all anyone could hear was his sneer. Laughter followed, sharp and ugly, echoing off the waiting shelter. The girl stayed still, her hood shadowing her face, earbuds in but music long forgotten. She felt the weight of every eye, some watching out of curiosity, others out of cruelty. The boy stepped closer, his grin widening. What? Are you deaf too? Or just too good to answer? His friends chuckled, nudging each other like it was all part of a comedy show. She breathed slowly, refusing to give him the satisfaction of flinching. But inside, her chest tightened. You don't belong here, he continued, his tone dripping venom. Why don't you go back to where you came from? A girl nearby gasped under her breath but said nothing. The laughter grew louder, feeding on silence. The girl adjusted her hood, her jaw tightening. She could already feel this wasn't just one insult. It was the beginning of something far worse. Around her, screens flicked to life. One by one, phones lifted like weapons, recording every second. Not to defend her, not to expose injustice, but to feed an endless scroll of content. A man leaned against the shelter, pretending to check his watch, his eyes darting anywhere but at the boy. A mother pulled her child closer, whispering, "Don't look. Stay out of it." Every laugh, every smirk was caught on camera, yet no voice rose in her defense. The boy thrived on their silence, emboldened by their fear. The girl shifted her weight, earbuds still in, though no song could drown the sting of betrayal from a crowd too cowardly to stand. Even the smallest glance of pity felt like condemnation. She was surrounded, yet utterly alone. And the worst part wasn't the cruelty of a teenager. It was the quiet approval of those who knew better. Hey, maybe she doesn't understand us, the boy sneered, stretching his words into a mocking accent. His friends burst out laughing, imitating broken English, tossing phrases back and forth like a cruel game. Maybe she's here for charity tickets, one chimed in. Another clutched his pockets dramatically. Careful, she might ask us for spare change. The crowd's laughter blended with the boys' voices, each echo stabbing deeper. A woman nearby shook her head, yet never spoke. Why don't you people just drive? Another teen shouted as though he'd delivered the punchline of the night. Phones caught every insult, every smirk, framing it not as harassment, but as entertainment. The girl pressed her lips together, the insults clawing at her composure. Every word wasn't just aimed at her. It was aimed at people who looked like her, carried like her, lived like her. Still she stood, headphones in, chin steady. Each insult was a fire, but she refused to burn, yet the boys weren't finished. Their cruelty had only just begun. A whisper broke through the jeers. This isn't right, someone murmured. Almost to themselves. Another voice followed, faint and trembling. Leave her alone. But the words were swallowed by the louder noise. The boy smirked, scanning the faces. See? Nobody cares. Nobody's stopping us. His friends howled with laughter, their victory confirmed by silence. Some in the crowd avoided his gaze, guilt flickering before they looked away. Others whispered nervously, but none dared step forward. The girl caught the faintest eye contact from an older man, but he quickly lowered his head. The message was clear. Survival meant silence. The divide was stark, those who dared to whisper, and those who chose to watch. But neither side broke the boy's growing confidence, and with each passing second, the weight pressed heavier on her chest. The boy's voice rose above the murmurs, cutting through every whisper. You're a nobody, he shouted, his words thunderous, echoing off the glass of the shelter. His friends cheered, reveling in the cruelty. The phrase hit harder than the accents, harder than the mocking laughter. It was more than an insult, it was a verdict. A stripping of humanity in front of a crowd too paralyzed to intervene. The air thickened, heavy with tension. Even the phones lowered slightly, as though everyone sensed the cruelty had reached a dangerous edge. The girl finally moved, her hands lifted slowly, her hood still shadowing her face. For the first time, the laughter faltered, unease slipping into the crowd. And then she pulled the fabric down. Her face emerged, calm and resolute. Gasps cut through the crowd. Whispers erupted, each one louder than the last. "That's Rihanna." Phones shot higher, trembling hands capturing every second. The boy's smirk faltered, his bravado colliding with recognition. The silence that had once empowered him now betrayed him, replaced by murmurs of disbelief and awe. Rihanna's eyes didn't waver. Her calmness spoke louder than any retort, her silence sharper than any insult he'd thrown. The crowd shifted, the balance of power tilting without a word spoken. The boy's grin collapsed into a twitch, his laughter choking on fear. Rihanna's gaze locked onto him, steady, unflinching, impossible to escape. Around them, whispers swelled, phones captured every second, and the air grew unbearable. He opened his mouth, but no words came. For the first time, he was silent. Today, no glam, no cameras. "Just me," Rihanna whispered to herself, tugging the hood over her head. The mirror reflected not a global icon, but a woman craving stillness. The decision had been building for weeks. Fame was a fortress, but also a prison. Every step choreographed, every smile rehearsed. She wanted something else, anonymity, even if just for a day. Pulling on jeans and sneakers, she slid her phone into her pocket, leaving her security team behind. No luxury car, no flashing bulbs, just the bus, the streets, and the hum of ordinary life. What she didn't know was that this choice, this longing for simplicity, would test her in ways she had never imagined. Her footsteps echoed on cracked sidewalks, sneakers scuffing against uneven pavement. Conversations hushed as she passed, eyes narrowing, whispers following in her wake. A man leaned against a wall, muttering, "Outsiders never last here." Children played nearby, their laughter cutting through the tension. But even that joy carried an edge, as though innocence was the only thing untouched by suspicion. The air was heavy, not just with humidity, but with history. A community scarred by injustice, worn thin by prejudice. Rihanna pulled her hood lower, each glance a reminder that blending in was harder than she imagined. Her mind drifted unbidden to Barbados. She remembered racing barefoot along sandy paths, her grandmother's voice calling her home before sundown. There, laughter was freedom, not something weighed down by judgment. Neighbors shared food, music spilled into the streets, and belonging was never questioned. She smiled faintly at the memory of her childhood friends. How no one cared about class, skin shade, or wealth. Those memories clashed violently with the stares surrounding her now. In Barbados, she had been just Robin, young, carefree, unmarked by the shadow of racism. Here she was both invisible and targeted, depending on the lens. The nostalgia sharpened into contrast. In America, even superstardom couldn't shield her from racism. Headlines praised her voice but mocked her accent. Critics dissected her hair, her style, her skin. She remembered a reporter once saying, "She's talented, but let's be honest, she's not relatable to everyone." The sting of those words lingered. A reminder that prejudice wore many masks, subtle, smiling, professional, walking those streets incognito, only stripped away the veil. Without the lights, she wasn't Rihanna, the icon. She was a black woman navigating a society that measured her worth against stereotypes. Every step reminded her that discrimination didn't need fame to find its target. Her heart thudded as she realized, without the entourage, she carried no shield. Fame had been her armor, but anonymity revealed her truth. She was exposed now, fragile in a way the public never saw. She thought, if they only knew how often power means nothing against prejudice. Fame protected her from paparazzi, but not from suspicion. It couldn't silence whispers or erase the color of her skin. She tugged her hood tighter, reminding herself she wasn't above the struggle. Beneath the glitter and recognition, she was just another woman standing in the line of racial bias. The bus stop came into view, ordinary yet weighted with unseen tension. She exhaled, steadying herself, convinced that maybe, just maybe, she could slip through unnoticed, sliding her earbuds in. She leaned against the bench, waiting. but fate had already set its stage. The choice to blend in wasn't just a disguise, it was an invitation to conflict. The bench creaked as a white teen approached, backpack slung over one shoulder. For a moment he seemed ready to sit, then stopped short, wrinkling his nose as if the space beside her carried a stench. He shifted instead to the far edge, leaving a deliberate gap. The message was clear. You don't belong here. Rihanna adjusted her hood, pretending not to notice, though the sting pulsed beneath her calm. She had felt this before, the quiet exclusion, the wall built without words. Her fingers tapped against her jeans, steadying her heartbeat. She thought, fame can fill arenas, but it can't fill the emptiness when someone makes you invisible. The silence was broken by something sharper. Why don't you people just drive? The boy muttered, not loud enough to sound confrontational, but clear enough for her to hear. The phrase slipped out like a joke, dressed in casual tone, yet heavy with centuries of contempt. She froze, not because she hadn't heard such words before, but because of the audacity, the ease with which prejudice rolled off his tongue. Her jaw clenched. He smirked at his phone, as if tossing away humanity was entertainment. Rihanna wanted to snap back, but she held her tongue, knowing that sometimes silence screamed louder. Still, the thought burned. This is what millions of black women endure daily. Invisible battles disguised as throwaway comments. Behind her, a muffled laugh joined the cruelty, and suddenly it wasn't just words. It was a performance. The group of teens leaned together, eyes darting her way. Smirks twisted their mouths, whispers laced with malice flickering between them. She didn't need to hear every syllable. The look said enough, mockery without restraint. One boy exaggerated her walk, another whispered something, and laughter rippled through their circle. The spotlight had shifted, not from fame, but from scorn. She thought back to Barbados, where glances were warm, welcoming. Here, the same glance cut like glass. Pulling her hood lower, she fought the urge to confront them. Instead, she let her gaze fall to the ground, though inside her chest, a storm brewed. The crowd had made her the spectacle, and she could feel every eye pressing against her skin. She slipped her earbuds in, pressing play. The beat pulsed, a familiar refuge. Music had always been her shield, lyrics drowning the noise of a hostile world. But this time, the rhythm wasn't enough. Their stares pierced through, stronger than any melody. She could still feel them watching, their whispers sneaking through the spaces between notes. Her thumb hovered over the volume button, tempted to drown it all out completely, but she stopped. No volume could erase the weight of being targeted. Music was armor, but armor can crack, and she knew theirs was only sharpening. Bet she can't even afford a ticket, one boy sneered, loud enough for everyone to hear. His friends erupted in laughter, their mockery echoing off concrete. The words struck harder than the smirks. Wealth, status, success, all stripped away with a single sentence that reduced her to a stereotype. Her throat tightened. The irony stung. She could buy the entire bus company, yet at this moment, she was forced into the same box as countless others, judged, diminished, dismissed. A woman nearby shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. A man cleared his throat, then turned away. The cruelty wasn't just in the insult itself, it was in the silence that followed, louder than applause in a stadium. The bystanders carried guilt in their eyes but locked it away behind lowered gazes. Phones were checked, shoelaces adjusted, walls stared at. Anything to avoid the truth unfolding feet away? Rihanna caught the glance of an older woman who looked down instantly. Cowardice disguised as caution, silence spread like smoke, thick, suffocating, inescapable. She knew then, the cruelty wasn't only in the mouths of the teenagers. It was in the restraint of those who refused to intervene. The crowd had made their choice, not by action, but by absence. Her pulse raced, but her face remained composed. She inhaled slowly, pressing the storm back down. This wasn't the first time she had faced hate, and it wouldn't be the last. Yet something about today felt different, inevitable. Behind her calm exterior, a fire gathered, waiting for the spark, and that spark was only seconds away. "Wagwan! You think you're special 'cause you're here?" The boy jeered, twisting her accent into a caricature, dragging out syllables in cruel mimicry. His voice rose louder, pulling attention like a siren. His friends erupted, each taking turns to repeat fragments of his mockery, their laughter bouncing in waves. It wasn't just ridicule, it was a performance. Humiliation broadcast to every ear at that bus stop. Rihanna froze, not because she lacked words, but because their cruelty sliced into something deeper, her heritage, her identity, her voice. They weren't mocking a stranger. They were desecrating the sound of where she came from. "Say it again, man, say it again!" Another urged, clutching his stomach with laughter. The ringleader smirked wide like he'd won a prize. "Bet she talks like this all the time at home. Can't even sound American." Their voices grew louder, feeding off each other, drowning the air with scorn. Her hands trembled, not out of fear but from rage she fought to bury. She had been ridiculed before, but never so publicly, never so viciously, never with her culture twisted into a joke, and still. They pushed further. A crumpled ball of paper sailed through the air, landing at her feet with a hollow smack. "Pick it up!" the boy sneered, his tone sharp enough to cut. His friends howled, clapping their hands as if the act of littering at her expense was comedy gold. Rihanna didn't move. The paper sat there like proof of their contempt, a physical reminder that words weren't enough. They needed to mark her space, invade it, claim it as theirs. One of the boys nudged another, whispering, "She won't do it." Too proud, the challenge hung heavy. Picking it up meant surrender. Leaving it there meant defiance. Her lips parted, then pressed shut again. She refused to give them that victory, but the humiliation burned hotter, like fire licking at her pride. It wasn't just trash on the ground. It was the weight of being reduced to nothing. A girl from the crowd lifted her phone, angling it for the perfect shot. "This is gonna blow up," she whispered, nudging her friend. Soon, more screens rose, tiny black mirrors catching her suffering, feeding it into the endless appetite of the internet. "Smile for TikTok," one boy mocked, waving his own phone. "Bet you'll get more views than your music." The laughter returned, now layered with the glow of recording lights. Each lens turned humiliation into spectacle, stripping away dignity, replacing it with clicks, likes, and shares. Rihanna's chest tightened. She could hear them whispering hashtags, already plotting captions, "random girl roasted at bus stop." None of them realized or cared that their target was the same woman whose voice filled their playlists, whose face they had cheered on screens, but to them, she wasn't Rihanna, not yet. She was simply another black woman made into content, her pain commodified for entertainment. Her fists curled tighter, nails biting skin. They were recording her downfall as if cruelty was sport, and every camera lens was a judge. Still, no one stepped forward to stop it. From the corner, a small child tugged at his mother's sleeve. "Why are they being mean?" he asked, eyes wide. The woman knelt, pulling him close, whispering sharply, "Don't get involved. Just stay quiet." Her warning carried weight, not just to her child, but to the entire crowd listening. Silence had become safety, and safety mattered more than justice. Rihanna caught the words, and they pierced as much as the insults. A mother teaching her child that injustice was best ignored. It wasn't only the teens betraying her, it was the lesson passed down in whispers. "Hey, cut it out!" The words came from a young man at the back, his voice trembling but resolute. He stepped forward, shoulders squared, defiance in his eyes. "She hasn't done anything to you." For a second, the group paused, surprised at the interruption. Then, as if on cue, they pounced. "Oh, look, Captain Save a Stranger," one boy jeered. "You her boyfriend or something?" Laughter swelled again, now directed at both of them. The young man's face reddened, but he didn't step back. "You're humiliating her for no reason. Just stop." But his words dissolved under their mockery, his courage drowned in the tide of cruelty. Rihanna's chest ached at the sight. His bravery flickered like a candle in a storm, bright but far too fragile, and she knew the storm wasn't finished. They moved closer, their laughter tightening around her like a noose. Though they didn't touch her, the weight of their presence pressed down, a circle closing in. Each laugh rang out sharper, echoing against walls, magnifying her shame. Every breath felt heavier, as if oxygen itself was being stripped away. Her pulse thudded in her ears. They weren't just mocking anymore, they were caging her, trapping her in humiliation, leaving no space to escape. She glanced toward the crowd, searching for an ally, but found only a sea of faces frozen in inaction. The teens smelled victory. Their smirks widened, their voices grew louder, their cruelty sharpened. She stood still, rooted in place, though every part of her screamed to move. But then came the final blow. The ringleader stepped forward, eyes blazing with arrogance. His voice rose above the noise, each word spat like venom. "You're nothing here. Nobody cares about you." The words hung in the air, cutting deeper than any insult before. For the first time, silence blanketed the crowd. Even the laughter died, swallowed by the raw sting of his declaration. Her chest hollowed, the phrase reverberating inside like an echo chamber. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. The silence wasn't mercy, it was agreement. The absence of defense, the void of support, confirmed his cruelty. Her fingers shook as she clutched her hood tighter, shielding her face, shielding herself. The insult wasn't just about her. It was about every black woman made to feel invisible, every voice dismissed, every presence reduced to nothing. And in that suffocating silence, something inside her shifted. Her hand rose slowly, almost without thought. With one deliberate motion, she lowered her hood. Gasps rippled instantly. The silence fractured, replaced by murmurs spreading like wildfire. "It's her. It's Rihanna." The recognition struck harder than lightning. Faces that had once sneered now froze, jaws slack, eyes wide. The same people who moments ago laughed at her accent, her worth, her identity, now scrambled to reconcile their cruelty with the icon standing before them. The spectacle had shifted. The predator and prey were no longer the same, and the ringleader felt it first. The boy's grin faltered, collapsing under the weight of recognition. His eyes darted to his friends, searching for validation, but their laughter had vanished. Phones were raised again, this time frantic, desperate to capture the moment they realized who they had mocked. Gasps turned to shouts, and whispers turned to chaos. The ringleader's swagger drained away, leaving behind only fear. His power dissolved in an instant, replaced by the crushing reality of who stood before him. The crowd that once fueled his cruelty now turned their energy against him, and Rihanna, finally visible, stood unshaken. "Look again," Rihanna said softly, her voice steady but sharp enough to cut through the air. She didn't shout, it didn't match their volume. Her calmness was its own weapon. The boy froze, his bravado slipping. Something in her tone unsettled him, like the ground beneath his feet had shifted. "You thought you knew who I was," she continued, her eyes locked on his. "But you only saw what you wanted to see." The crowd leaned in. Silence, thick and heavy, replaced the chorus of laughter that had mocked her minutes earlier. Her words weren't loud, but their precision dismantled him more effectively than any insult he had thrown. The power had shifted, and everyone could feel it. The boy's smirk faltered. He opened his mouth to retort, but nothing came. It wasn't fear of who she was. It was fear of being seen for who he was. The crowd didn't yet speak, but their eyes said it all. A whisper cut through the silence. "That's Rihanna!" Another voice echoed, louder this time. "Wait! Oh my God! It really is her!" Gasps spread like wildfire, each exclamation feeding the next. Heads craned, eyes widened, and phones tilted higher. The same crowd that once watched passively now buzzed with realization. She wasn't just another woman humiliated at a bus stop. She was a global icon standing in front of them, exposed yet unshaken. The energy shifted. Every pair of eyes that had once judged her now burned with curiosity, guilt, and awe. The teens, who moments ago thrived on performance, now stood caught in their own unwanted spotlight, and the story was only beginning to unfold. Post it now, someone urged, their thumbs flying across a screen. Within moments, clips, spread on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, each video captioned with disbelief. Rihanna was harassed at a bus stop, caught on camera, teens mocking Rihanna. Notifications exploded, hashtags ignited. Stand with Rihanna, racism exposed, justice at the bus stop. Across the globe, strangers who had never set foot in that neighborhood were suddenly witnesses. They saw her calm defiance, his unraveling smirk, and the crowd's guilty silence. The bus stop was no longer just a street corner. It had become a stage for the world, magnified by millions of eyes. Rihanna hadn't raised her voice, but the internet had amplified it louder than any megaphone. And the teen, once bold, now looked smaller with every notification pinging around him. A girl near the front opened a live stream. Within minutes, thousands tuned in. Comments flew faster than they could be read. "This is disgusting. How dare they treat her like this? I protect black women always. Expose every single one of them." Hearts, fire emojis, and furious faces flooded the screen. Viewers demanded accountability, tagging news outlets, celebrities, and activists. The humiliation the teen had staged was now flipped, his cruelty immortalized, his name one hashtag away from infamy. Rihanna didn't glance at the cameras. She didn't need to. The truth was already in motion, and the internet had become her jury. The teen's hands fidgeted, sweat dotting his forehead. His audience had changed. And now, every second was judgment. For the first time, voices rose, not in laughter, but in defense. "That's not okay," a young woman snapped, stepping forward. Another added, "You need to apologize." One by one, bystanders who had been statues now spoke. "Leave her alone," someone shouted. "We saw everything." The wall of silence that had shielded the teens cracked, replaced by murmurs of solidarity. The ringleader looked around, realization dawning that the same crowd he controlled had turned against him. And Rihanna stood tall, saying nothing, letting the power of presence do what words could not. I didn't know," he stammered, voice trembling. His eyes darted between phones, desperate for an escape. "I didn't mean it like that." But the excuses fell flat, his once mighty arrogance collapsing into fear. The cameras caught every stutter, every glance, every bead of sweat. "You were laughing," someone from the crowd fired back. "You meant every word." His friends, who had cheered him on minutes before, stepped back, distancing themselves from the imploding ringleader. The teen's power evaporated. He wasn't feared anymore. He was exposed. And the silence that followed wasn't protective. It was accusatory. Rihanna finally spoke again, her words deliberate, each syllable heavy. "Racism isn't ignorance. It's a choice." The line cut through the noise, slicing deeper than any insult. The crowd stilled. The live stream paused in reverence, the teen's excuses dying in his throat. She wasn't just confronting him. She was addressing everyone. There, online, and beyond. "Did you see this?" A radio host's voice blared across morning broadcasts. By dawn, every major headline carried the same story. Rihanna shuts down racist teens. On Twitter, hashtags dominated. "Justice for Rihanna." "End racism now." "Accountability matters." Instagram Reels replayed her whisper. TikTok stitched her piercing words, and millions debated what it meant for race, respect, and power. Celebrities added their voices. One actor tweeted, "She didn't just defend herself, she defended us all." A singer posted, "Every black woman knows this feeling. Thank you for showing strength." The video wasn't just viral, it had become a cultural flashpoint. Conversations erupted in schools, workplaces, and living rooms worldwide, transforming one ugly moment into a rallying cry. And the boy at the center of it couldn't escape the fallout. By midday, the boy's school released a statement. "We condemn this behavior in the strongest terms." His classmates distanced themselves, muttering that they wanted nothing to do with him. Former friends unfollowed, teachers spoke with quiet disappointment, and the community whispered louder than ever. At home, his parents appeared grim on camera, reading from a typed page. "We apologize for our son's actions. His words do not represent our family." But apologies forced under public pressure never erased the damage already done. Reporters expected Rihanna to demand punishment, but instead, she chose clarity over revenge. "I'm not pressing charges," she told journalists, "because this isn't about me being famous. It's about what happens every single day to people whose names you'll never hear." Her words spread as quickly as the original video. Opinion pieces praised her restraint, activists hailed her decision, and ordinary people shared their own stories of discrimination, finally feeling seen. Rihanna shifted the conversation. What began as a cruel taunt at a bus stop had now become an international reminder that racism doesn't need cameras to be real. She carried herself with unshaken poise, transforming humiliation into a testament of resilience. "This isn't just about me," she explained. "It's about every person silenced, overlooked, or dismissed." Her voice, once mocked, now resonated as a symbol of dignity reclaimed. The moment no longer belonged to her alone. It belonged to countless others who had endured in silence. In a televised interview, she leaned forward and said, "When you call someone nobody, you're really showing who you are." The line echoed across platforms, a truth impossible to ignore, turning a moment of cruelty into a lasting declaration of worth. What about you? The question hangs in the air, heavier than the silence that once filled that bus stop. If you had stood there, would you have spoken up or stayed quiet like so many did? Share your truth in the comments. Your voice may inspire someone else's courage. Stories like this shouldn't fade once the screen goes dark. By liking, subscribing, and sharing, you help bring hidden racism into the light where it can't be ignored. Join this growing community. Together we can turn painful moments into lessons, silence into strength, and awareness into lasting change.